There is something incredibly funny about watching a group of perfectly capable adults completely fall apart the moment someone in authority asks a simple question. And if you want to see that dynamic at its absolute peak, you have to look at one of those classic Three's Company episodes where Mr. walks into the apartment expecting a straightforward answer, and instead triggers a chain reaction of panic that nobody knows how to stop. It is such a small thing on the surface. A knock at the door. A serious expression. A request for clarification. And suddenly the room feels like a courtroom. Jack looks like he's about to confess to something he didn't do, goes into controlled damage mode, and his imagination starts running faster than logic ever could. The situation I want to talk about centers around a simple misunderstanding involving a late rent payment. Not an eviction, not a crime, just a delay. Jack has been juggling extra shifts at the restaurant, has been covering some household expenses, and has misunderstood which envelope was supposed to go where. It's minor. It's solvable. But the problem is not the money. The problem is the authority figure demanding immediate clarity. The episode opens casually. The three roommates are in their usual rhythm. Jack is practicing a cooking routine in the kitchen, dramatically flipping an imaginary pan while giving himself compliments under his breath. Is balancing a checkbook with a focused expression, and is sitting on the couch trying to organize bills but clearly distracted by the television. The atmosphere is light. There's no crisis yet. Then there's a knock. Not an aggressive knock, just firm, confident, official. And the moment the door opens to reveal Mr. standing there with a small notebook in hand, you can feel the temperature in the room shift. Authority has arrived, and authority expects answers. Now here, where the brilliance of the comedy begins, doesn't accuse anyone of anything dramatic. He simply says there seems to be a discrepancy with the rent. It might have been misfiled. It might have been miscounted. He just needs confirmation. But the word discrepancy hits Jack like a thunderclap. You can almost see the gears turning in his head. He wasn't even thinking about the rent 2 seconds ago. Now he's imagining eviction notices, humiliation, maybe even having to move back in with his mother. His posture stiffens. His voice jumps half an octave higher than usual. Instead of answering calmly, he, sensing the spiral, tries to intercept. She steps slightly in front of Jack, not aggressively but protectively. She adopts that rational tone she always uses when she's trying to keep things from getting worse. She asks for specifics. She reaches for the stack of bills. She wants facts. Meanwhile, latches onto one word, says something like problem. That's all she needs. In her mind, problem becomes catastrophe. She gasps. She drops the envelope she was holding. Papers scatter onto the floor. And who walked in expecting a quick confirmation now sees three people acting suspiciously nervous. That's the spark. He wasn't suspicious before, but now he's curious. He crosses his arms. He narrows his eyes slightly. His voice becomes firmer. He asks again where the rent payment is. And because he's asking with that tone, Jack hears accusation instead of inquiry. That's the heart of this kind of Three's Company comedy. Authority expects immediate clarity. The roommates, fueled by insecurity and pride, provide the exact opposite. Instead of simply saying, "Let's check," Jack starts rambling. He talks about how responsible they are. He references how punctual they've always been. He gestures dramatically toward the apartment as if the furniture itself can testify on his behalf. His hands start moving faster than his thoughts. He knocks into a chair. He tries to sit down confidently and misses slightly, having to adjust awkwardly. John's physical comedy here is just masterful. He doesn't just look nervous. He becomes nervous. His shoulders creep upward. His smile locks into place even when it doesn't fit the situation. His laugh arrives half a second too late, then lingers too long. Bends down to gather the scattered papers dropped. But now, because she's kneeling on the floor flipping through envelopes while watches, it looks like she's hiding something. Leans forward, trying to see what she's doing. She moves slightly to block his view, not because she's guilty, but because she wants space to think. And that tiny defensive gesture confirms suspicion. This is how chaos spreads socially in Three's company, not through evidence, through reaction. The more asks simple, direct questions, the more Jack dodges. And the more Jack dodges, the more serious becomes. Authority expects order. Instead, it receives chaos. Tries to help, that's always dangerous. She blurts out that she mailed something. Or maybe she didn't mail something, or maybe she mailed the wrong thing. Her timeline is unclear. Her confidence fades mid-sentence. She looks to Jack for approval. Jack gives her a look that says, "Please stop talking." Notices the look. Now believes there is a secret. The humor builds in waves. There are pauses where nobody speaks and the silence feels heavier than any dialogue could. Waits. Jack swallows, flips another page, whispers something that doesn't help at all. And the audience laughs not because the problem is huge, but because the emotional responses are huge. What makes Three's company so effective in moments like this is how it reflects a very real human instinct. When someone in authority demands an immediate explanation, especially in front of others, people panic. They fill the silence. They overcompensate. They try to look innocent instead of simply being honest. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, that dynamic resonated deeply. Landlords had power. Jobs were tied to stability. Shared living situations weren't always socially accepted, especially with Jack's carefully constructed public persona. There was always an undercurrent of needing to appear respectable. So when Mr. steps in expecting clarity, it triggers more than just anxiety about money. It triggers fear of judgment. Eventually finds the truth. The payment wasn't missing. It was misapplied to the wrong account number, a clerical error, something so small it barely qualifies as a plot. But before she can announce this, Jack has already escalated things by suggesting he'll take full responsibility, which sounds noble but also suspiciously dramatic. Interprets that as confession. Gasps again, tries to speak but gets interrupted. Timing is everything here. Every time someone tries to reset the situation, another reaction cuts in. Jack moves toward the door as if preparing for eviction, even though no one has mentioned eviction. Follows him, trying to calm him down, but his attempt at calm comes across as patronizing. Stands up quickly, almost knocking over the coffee table, and finally announces that the rent was received. Oh, there's a beat. A long beat. Everyone freezes. Blinks. Jack slowly turns around, still mid-gesture of despair. His mouth is open, but no sound comes out. That pause is where the laughter peaks, because the entire storm was built on the expectation of authority demanding certainty. And the moment certainty arrives, it feels almost anticlimactic. Clears his throat, he straightens his jacket. He tries to regain dignity. Jack laughs too loudly, hugs in relief. The tension dissolves instantly. What I love about this pattern is how it shows that chaos isn't always born from deception. Sometimes it's born from fear of authority, the expectation that you must answer perfectly and immediately. Jack Tripper is the engine of that chaos. His ego cannot handle appearing irresponsible, so he overreacts. He performs innocence. He amplifies suspicion through physical exaggeration. Balances him with reason, but even she gets pulled into the current. Amplifies the emotional side, turning mild concern into theatrical panic. And the landlord, whether it's or Roper in earlier seasons, acts as the catalyst. Without that authority figure stepping into the apartment with expectations, the roommates would likely solve the issue quietly. That's why Three's Company became such a hit. It took everyday social dynamics and exaggerated them just enough to expose how fragile composure really is. The misunderstandings weren't complex. They were human. Even today, watching that episode feels relatable. Who hasn't stumbled over words when a boss asks a direct question? Who hasn't felt their heart race when someone in charge looks at them expectantly? The show turns that universal discomfort into physical comedy. Doors slam, papers fly, faces contort, and at the center of it all is Jack, trying desperately to look in control while visibly unraveling. And honestly, that's why it still works decades later. Because authority expecting immediate answers hasn't gone anywhere. If anything, it's more common now. Meetings, emails, deadlines, that same tension exists. The Three's Company just wraps it in bright lighting, colorful sets, and perfectly timed pratfalls. By the end of the episode, everything resets. The rent is fine, the apartment is secure, leaves slightly confused but satisfied. Jack collapses onto the couch in exaggerated exhaustion, shakes her head, laughs in relief. And the audience understands something simple and comforting. Most of the time, the panic was unnecessary. That's the charm of this show. It lets us laugh at our own tendency to overreact when authority demands clarity. If you haven't revisited this kind of episode in a while, it's worth it just to watch how quickly a calm room can turn into a stage for collective panic. And if you've ever found yourself stumbling over explanations in front of someone important, you might see a little bit of Jack Tripper in yourself. And maybe that's why we still love him.